Hello, everyone. Happy Fabulous Friday. I am Hayley Hoffman, founder and CEO of Dandi Day. And Dandi Day is a conscious beauty firm creating what we do is we bridge ingredient companies doing good for people and planet and brands that have the reach to create that change one person at a time. And so Fabulous Friday is our weekly segment where we have special guests on like Margaret James. Hello, Margaret.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're so happy to have you. So these talks are really inspired, were created to inspire and um, i- inspire creativity and innovation for the beauty community as we are creators. And so that takes some personal and professional development. And so we have some different segments. Um, one of them is consciousness and mindfulness. And so we're so happy to welcome you, Margaret. And you are an Ayurvedic wellness coach and restorative yoga teacher. So you definitely fit within our our category today of consciousness and mindfulness. So thank you again for your time. And you're going to be sharing with us about resting with purpose. I think we all need some rest, and really how to reveal your inner radiance through rest. So, um, yes, welcome. And I was wondering if you'd like to say anything else before we get started about who you are, maybe where you live. Um,
Yeah, thank you. So, like Haley said, my name is Margaret James, and I live in Denver, Colorado. So, right now it actually is snowing out, and anytime it snows, it just makes me want to really turn inwards and really interface with this part of myself that doesn't really get as much attention as it needs sometimes. So, we'll be talking a lot more about that, about how to interface with yourself.
I love that. Sometimes that can be a little bit scary. I'm just
Definitely.
gonna say interfacing with yourself. Sometimes I scare myself.
Yeah.
Um, well, Margaret, as we get started with your talk, I would love for you to guide us through a little grounding or a meditation, just so we can show up and kind of tap in, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So we'll start today with a nervous system regulation technique, and it's going to be a pretty simple one, but you have something called baroreceptors that come down the sides of your neck. And what happens right here also is part of the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is really responsible for the fight or flight response or the freeze response. So most of us lately have been operating in a very heightened either fight or flight response. And a lot of people are also in freeze where systems of overwhelm. I don't know what to do. There's so much coming at me. There's so much change, and I just feel really stuck. So, what this will do is actually help to stimulate the vagus nerve so that we can bring it down into a more regulated state. So, what we'll do is a simple neck stretch. So, you'll drop your right ear towards your right shoulder, and then you'll look down at your right shoulder. You may start to notice a change in the breath. Whatever change happens, just let it happen. Really looking down, noticing the pattern of the shirt, the texture, and feeling the sensation through the left side of the neck. Your body may also want to shift forward or backward or side to side. Let it do so. If your mind starts to wander, come back to the right shoulder. Get really curious about the texture, the color, the way the clothing feels on your skin. I'll take 3 more breaths here. Give a sigh from my body. It's a sign that it's starting to down regulate. And after your third breath, slowly bring the head back up to neutral. And do a quick scan, just noticing what's around you, what the colors are. And we'll go to the left side, so dropping left ear towards left shoulder, and then turning the chin to look down at the left shoulder. And again, becoming curious about the texture, the color, the sensation of clothing on your skin. While you're engaged with this curiosity of the left shoulder, you're at the same time noticing the stretch through the right side of the neck. You may let out a big sigh. You may then start to yawn. Your body may want to reorient itself into structure. But whatever happens, come through naturally. Control it or try to change it. And take 3 more breaths here. After your third breath, very gently, very slowly come back up to neutral. And then reorienting to the room, so noticing how close things are, how far things are, noticing the color, how the light bounces off different objects, staying really present to your surroundings. And also be sure to look behind you. Do this on both sides. This allows the nervous system to know that nothing is coming to get you. And you may consciously know that, but there's a part of our body that's still always in fight or flight, ready to respond to something that's going to attack us. So, nice big breath.
That was great. Sorry, what's that?
Did you happen to notice a change in your breath or a yawn or anything?
Yeah, I had some pretty big exhales, and I think by the time I looked at my left shoulder, then I was really starting to really breathe, deep in my belly breath,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah, it was nice to take that break. I feel like we're done.
Yeah.
I feel like we're done.
I know,
But
it's
we'll keep
such a great
going.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts on the topic today of rest and inner radiance, what that correlation is, and if there is in your practice and as a coach and all your training, if you see a particular process that maybe continually rises up, or does it look different? What are some things that you've observed about rest and how things are discovered, like radiance?
So I, as Hayley said, I am an Ayurvedic wellness coach and a restorative yoga teacher. And I find that these two have a really beautiful bridge between one another, because so much of what health isn't just the supplements that you take, and it's not just the food that you eat. It's you actually being able to be established in yourself. That is the definition of health according to Ayurveda, is this term Svastha, Svastha. And it means to be established in oneself, to feel at home in your own body. And we do this through actually being able to check in with ourselves. So I teach a 20-minute rest practice. This is what I work on with clients, and I host an online course called Exploration of Rest. It's really all about how do you cultivate this practice of rest. And we'll get into that in a little bit, but I want to give you a little bit more information about what I mean when I talk about rest, because a lot of times when I am either teaching or in conversation with people, people seem to associate rest with sleep, and they're two completely different things. There are physiologically different purposes. Sleep is you are unconscious. You have no awareness of your surroundings, of your body. There's no consciousness to help you observe your surroundings or to check in with yourself. So when I talk about rest, it's really this conscious rest where you are still present to what's happening. You still notice the sounds and what's happening outside, but they don't distract you because you have what we call in yoga pratyahara, this withdrawal of the senses, that you are now turning this output where we're always checking in out there, making sure that everything out there is safe. And we're turning that back into ourselves to check in and ask ourselves, yeah, how am I? What do I need right now? Do I feel healthy? Do I feel nourished? My dog is scratching at the door. I'm sorry if you hear. And because how often do we actually take that time to sit down and truly ask ourselves, how am I? Especially during 2020, the year where we have had so many changes, so many things to come face to face with. A lot of our attention has been pulled to the outside, and everything that's happening on the inside has been forgotten about and pushed to the very, very back burner. So this practice of rest is really a way for you to bring that same love and attention back in towards yourself and to check in with, am I living in alignment with my values? Am I showing up in the way that I want to be showing up in the world? And if not, well, then how can I change that? And to bring in some Ayurvedic perspective also is that there is a term called ojas, OJAS, and this is the subtle essence of where our sexuality, sensuality, creativity, immunity comes from. And it's really all like this juicy, radiant stuff that we want more of. Why people take stuff like collagen supplements and drink green juices is to bolster this quality of ojas. But we know from so many different sources is that that's only one approach. This food aspect is in Ayurveda there are three pillars of health: it's food, sleep, sex. And it's really our relationship to each of these that allows us to transform how we feel about ourselves. So the food is really important, but what's really more important is how you're eating. Are you sitting down to nourish yourself with love and devotion, or are you trying to choke down a kale salad because someone told you that's good for you? And if you're choking it down, you're hating it the whole time, well, you're eating those emotions as well. So it's really how can you invite love and devotion into how you eat. And then we have sleep, and it's our relationship to really being able to receive and to slow down. Sleep often gets pushed to the back burner. I worked in commercial real estate for 10 years, and it was very much almost like a badge of honor if you could be working 12-plus-hour days, and which means that you were getting 6 hours of sleep, because then you also had happy hour to go to. Like, it was such an insane industry to be working in. And yeah, so sleep gets pushed to the back burner. So at the same time, we have to remember that sleep is such an important part for our restoration and our rejuvenation. So that's why we talk about beauty sleep. We're going to talk about beauty rest today, because again, two different things. And then sex, which is not only actual sex with a partner, but it's also your ability to create, and it's your energy management. And again, this year has also kind of pushed that to the side. Is that when we are so overwhelmed, it's really hard to create something, create a connection with your partner, create a new project, create a business, anything like that, because it's coming from the same energy source. So to come back to this idea of ojas, is that ojas is when all of these are balanced, when our relationship to food, sleep, and sex is in a nourished, loving state, when we feel at home in ourselves, then this quality of ojas is increased, which means that whenever you come back from a vacation, you just have like this glowing skin and you just feel so good. And it doesn't even really have anything to do with what you look like. It's just how you feel. And because you feel so rested and relaxed and happy, is that you somehow have like this magnetizing force where people are like, wow, she is just like, I want to be around her. I want to know what her secret is. And this is what we call ojas in Ayurveda. So this is really where this inner radiance comes from, is how comfortable do you feel in your own skin? How proud of you are you of how you're living your life? Are you able to check in to see if you're living through your values? So one of the ways that we do this through rest is this 20-minute practice I was talking about. And one of my teachers says that rest is the antidote to stress. And what we also know from the more of like the beauty cosmetic and even like biology and chemistry is that stress, specifically cortisol, actually wears down the collagen and elastin in the skin. So if you want to talk about the actual quality of our skin, stress has a lot to do with it too. So we take this 20-minute practice, and it's only 20 minutes, y'all. It's the fastest and longest. It's this very weird renegotiation with time when you get into this. It's almost a backdoor to meditation, because the whole idea is that you are fully supported and you are completely held, and the only goal is to be as comfy as possible. Because as soon as you are held and supported and feel comfy, the whole body can relax. It's no longer trying to like keep the tension up and trying to react or respond to something. It can just let go. And it's a really sweet practice of surrender as well. And it's a gentle opening. It's not about stretching. It's this gentle opening of being able to receive this present moment, to receive the support. And I think what the most profound part of it for me is that it's always a reminder that I don't have to do it by myself. That something greater has our back. So how this also comes back to this inner radiance and specifically like creativity, you can think about like the Big Bang. From nothing comes something. And that's really how creativity is. You can think of how a baby's conceived. From nothing, then there's something. And so we have to make space to be able to do nothing so that these creative forces and this creative impulse can come through. So this new idea, this new innovation, this new energy that wants to come through actually has the space to do so. You can think of it also as like the airways. There's lots of noise in the airways, lots of stuff coming at us all the time about the news and our own businesses, our own lives, everything that's going on. We have to make the time to clear those airways so that we can hear what we are meant to hear. So we can hear where we can be of greatest service and be able to show up for that creative impulse that's coming through us. So rest does so much. And I also like to think of it as a sacred pause, where it's this container, this 20-minute container for you to hold what's most important, because everything that you want to do in your life requires you. And if you're not showing up, or if you're showing up depleted, then it's the quality of your giving isn't going to be as high. And sometimes there's even a quality of resentment that comes with that because other people aren't telling you that it's okay or that you have permission to rest. So you have to create this container for yourself so that you can show up fully with all of your heart, without an ounce of resentment or wishing that things were different, because you have prioritized yourself and your own desires.
Well, Margaret, that was all so powerful. And I felt like you were just speaking straight into my heart. Like so many things that you're sharing are things that have come up for me this year. And I know so many other people. And as we visited a little bit before we started, we kind of got forced as a society into this place of commanded rest where everything was taken away from us and we had no other choice but to be sequestered and to be with ourselves, to be able to check in that alignment, and to see like what comes up for us. Um, and as I don't know, oh yeah, I did say it at the beginning of this, like how sometimes that can be scary, and Yeah, I think creating that space for whatever it is that we face, and I love how you said that it's a gentle place. You're creating a gentle, non-judgmental place when you're resting for those things to just be, and how they inform us, I guess. And I think since I don't really have like an Ayurvedic practice, I have a mindfulness practice, and so I'm learning from you some of these new terms and seeing the alignment, and having a deeper understanding from a different philosophy. And um, but I do see how, through my mindfulness practice of not judging my feelings or emotions that do come up, that does eventually inspire the creativity. And you said something at the very end about resentment. Resentment might come up, and you wouldn't know this. I had to share this with you, but I think resentment is something that I've kind of been dealing with my entire life, and I see it come up in certain ways. And part of that stems from, yeah, I'm adopted, and adopted by a Caucasian family. And you also talked about identity, and that's one of the things that one of my lifelong struggles is how do I identify, um, without having a particular culture or people group that necessarily seem aligned. And so I'm on this journey right now to kind of unpack my identity as well as its correlation to resentment, and how to discover like who I am at a much deeper level, and that really only comes through rest. I've found it extremely challenging. So I wasn't expecting to get that personal here on Fab Fridays, but you just kind of pulled it out of me. So I thank you for that. I hope that this really inspires other people as, um, the Dandi Day is a purpose-driven brand, and we work with many other purpose-driven brands, companies, where they're wanting to create change in a positive way. And, creating that space, as you're saying, having that time for rest is so closely aligned with our purpose, and discovering that. So um, I just really appreciate you in this time. It's been such a gift. I can't believe it's already almost 25 minutes had passed.
Um, and as I'm sitting here listening to you and really hearing you, I also think of rest as like a remothering practice,
Mm,
of being
that's
able
beautiful.
to, as these different parts of ourselves start to show up, is how do we extend this divine mother within us and invite these parts back in, knowing that they're not bad, and they're not meant to be cast out. And as these parts of us want to make themselves known, is reminding them that they belong. And so for me, rest has also been a really profound practice of belonging to myself.
Yeah.
Um, and I realized that I also didn't touch on, like, okay, well, how do you rest? So the easiest way that I do it is to literally lay on the couch for 20 minutes. And I'll set my alarm for 22 minutes so that I have a couple minutes to like get my wiggles out and like get comfy.
Mhm.
Um, and the reason that I set an alarm also is because it's really easy to just like drift off into a really deep sleep. But your brain likes to know that there's gonna be an endpoint. And so it actually allows you to fully withdraw, and let go of having any control or worry that you're going to miss your time, you're going to sleep too long, or whatever it is. And ideally on your left side, and you want to cover your eyes. You could literally just lay on the floor if you wanted to and cover your eyes. And having your eyes covered is a really great way also to start to turn those senses in towards yourself. So that
Why
would
on
be
your
my,
left side? Is it because of your heart, or
yeah,
like?
so it's A for digestion. So if like after lunch, I typically rest around 2:30 because that's when the natural energy slump hits. So instead of reaching for coffee, I'll just do a rest practice. And then it's also because you have something called your vena cava. And so especially for pregnant women, it's safe to be on the left side. It takes pressure off the vena cava, which is what flows the blood into the babies. So um, anyways, yeah, so ideally left side, cover your eyes. Those are pretty much in at least 20 minutes. And I say that because it takes the average person 15 minutes to relax. And the last 5 is in this really deep state where you're like not asleep, but you're not awake. It's pretty magical.
Yeah, I love that state. So
Yeah.
when I was doing yoga on a more consistent basis, I would love at the end, right, when you're just like laying there in corpse pose,
Yeah.
and sometimes I would drift off and snore, and
Mhm.
I would wake myself up. I'm like, oh, that was great.
Yeah, and
So,
that's really great feedback also, because if you do fall asleep during Shavasana, or even during your rest practice, if you start doing that on the couch, if you do fall asleep within that 20 minutes, it usually means that you're coming from a very depleted state, which means
mm,
that a consistent rest practice is going to be even more powerful.
oh, that's wonderful insight. So I've just been like taking a bunch of notes as you've been talking, and I'm like, ooh, that's good. I'm gonna do that. So, um, yeah, and I will say, right, we definitely in industry, for chemists, for sales representatives, just in business, we're also very depleted and just driven by our timelines. And it's one of the things that I've seen over the years where like maybe some lack of innovation has happened because there hasn't been enough space to create. There's so much pressure, so much going. Um, And so I always love the times where I could just go and sit somewhere and listen to someone talk and not have any projects to do, but I would be inspired by the talk because I had the space to not have to find something to fit it in. And it's almost like shopping, right? Like when you're, I know this is kind of out there, but when you're looking for something very specific, you can like never find it, and it's so like terrible. Um, but going shopping and like it's just you're just out looking about. Like I've always found my favorite clothing items or my favorite items for anything when I'm just not even looking, right? They just kind of pops out. And so seemed like a fitting
Yeah, totally.
example.
Yeah, it's another like analogy is if you think of a museum, the reason that they have, one piece of art on an entire wall by itself is because that white space really brings in the focus to that one piece of art. And so when we
Oh,
create white space
interesting.
in our own lives, that we can actually focus on what's most important for us.
Mm,
Because if we just fill all of our time, we have no way to focus on what's most important, or
mm.
allow us to be able to hear where we can be of greatest service.
And I love that. I did want to touch on one other thing. I know that we're about out of time, but I think it's so important. And one of the things that I was really inspired by reading more about you is that, and you mentioned it here today about belonging to yourself and pulling yourself back. Um, as the world informs us, we're always reaching out for that information and that direction from our outside world to inform us of who we are, how we should be, what is or what isn't. And then in terms of this remothering process, um, I guess I'm just thinking about people who might have had traumatic parental experiences and how maybe rest could be really difficult for them. And so I don't know, I think just being sensitive about that, I wanted to um, encourage people that are going into this and maybe they didn't have a great mother or they didn't have a great nurturing experience. Like what advice do you have um, for people that might have had that experience?
Yes. So uh, there's 2 different ways. So sometimes when people are carrying trauma, is to withdraw from the senses can actually be very traumatic, like re-triggering for them. And so doing like a practice that we did before of the nervous system regulation back and forth, and then orienting. seeing where things are, how close they are to you, like getting really present to what's real right here is
Mhm.
another way. And then to extend on that is simply observing. So instead of laying down and like closing your eyes and not being engaged in the outside world, is to actually just go outside and to just observe what's happening, like watch the leaves on the tree, watch the birds fly by, and allow that to be this titration between the inside world and the outside world, where you're relating to one another at the same time. So that's probably my biggest suggestion is definitely to go slow. And if the term mother is not one that resonates, then you can use, as a just divine love. That's really all it is. And if
Yeah.
that doesn't even work either, you can talk about higher consciousness or your higher self and inviting that part in as well.
Well, I love all that. Thank you so much for all of these wonderful tools and things that are really practical that we can apply to our life. So I just really appreciate your generosity and sharing your knowledge and your practice with us today. And um, so everybody can follow you, right, on Instagram. What are all of your handles you'd like to share?
Yes, so Instagram is where I'm probably most active, and it's Hey Margaret James. And my website is margaretljames.com, and you can sign up for my newsletter there, where I send out, it's part storytelling, part education, from mainly Ayurvedic perspective. So you can sign up for that as well.
Well, I am signed up. I'm following you, and it's just been such a pleasure. So I wish you a wonderful holiday season and an anticipated 2021, and hopefully we'll be connecting soon.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm so
Okay.
grateful for your generosity as well to invite me on. And yeah, thank you so much for listening and holding space for me.
You're welcome. Okay, well, make it a great day, and thanks everybody for tuning in.